Hi, I'm back, and today I am parked. I'm not driving because this is an EV topic I've done a bit of research on, and so I'll need to glance at my phone, and it's also gonna get me to proactively think. So I don't consider this to be the safest thing to talk about while I'm on the road driving, and also paying attention to the 101 things happening while driving in Kathmandu. And it is about EVs and whether they are actually environmentally friendly, or is it something that's being sold to us. Like everything, I believe there is a pro and a con to everything. And I guess let's start with the advantages of driving an EV in Kathmandu and in Nepal. And the first being, there is no tailpipe emission. EV cars run on pure electricity. Batteries are stacked in a big series, a big battery pack underneath the car. If you ever see one, just pop your head underneath the car and you'll either see a battery pack sticking out below the door, or you'll see something underneath that's a battery pack. And there is no tailpipe emissions, no carbon monoxide coming out, no carbon dioxide coming out, no sulfur dioxide, monoxide, nothing. No catalytic converter to help mitigate harmful emissions, nothing. The EV cars also don't produce sound at all. It's a DC motor. It is an engine, but it's not a piston pumping engine either, like diesel, where a lot of pressure will ignite that blast, or in petrol where there is a tiny spark that will ignite the blast, and so moving the pistons. Like that EV there, it's quiet. And as a result, there is no sound, there is no tailpipe emissions, and you sort of just move silently. There really isn't any more description I can give. The car is there, it's a big car. Comes in all shapes and sizes these days, but no motor sound. And the thing is, in comparison to regular gasoline cars, I'll be referring to petrol and diesel cars as gasoline cars, there is no carbon emitted after you start driving the vehicle. Whereas in petrol, diesel, gasoline cars, the more you drive, the bigger your carbon footprint is. The more carbon it'll emit. There's actually a whole setting in my car menu showing how many kilometers I've driven and how many kgs of carbon dioxide I've actually saved by driving this car. Is that a marketing gimmick, or is that actually the truth? It's both for me, honestly. But the thing is, in Kathmandu, it's so congested, it's so loud, and when you're stuck in bumper to bumper traffic, the fumes, the exhaust from all these bikes running around you and cars running around you. And the thing is, in traffic, car users will actually turn up their AC, and thus because it's so fumy and it can hurt and burn your lungs and throat. And that will add on to that cycle of, again, needing to burn more fuel to keep your cabin warmer and cleaner, which, if you think about it, is a bit ironical. But the thing is, that's the reality we're in. And so in all of that sense, EVs, you sit in traffic, you're not actually burning petrol and diesel, you're just spending electricity to turn your AC on. So you're not really contributing to that exhaust fumy thing. And that's good. EVs are environmentally friendly in that essence. But that's only one side of the picture we're all looking at when it comes to EV. Now I'm switching over to the cons if you haven't noticed yet. EVs are being mass produced, and that's a great thing. The more mass production there is, the cheaper and the easier it is to produce something. Imagine if you had a product, if you had a pencil, right? And you had to handcraft it and everything, and that pencil would take hours to produce and would take a lot of energy and resources. You would need all the equipment just to carve out a pencil from a block of wood and insert the lead piece. But then suddenly you start mass producing it. You get also a machine, and then suddenly it's the machine and your inventory start producing 100, 500 pieces of pencil a day, an hour. It suddenly becomes more economical. Like, money wise, the same equipment can be used over and over and over again for a lot of products, right? And so in that essence, EVs, because they're new, they've just started being mass produced. The effort, the energy, the research and development, the mining, I'll talk to you about that in a bit, that goes into producing an EV is like quite high. And because of that, the energy consumed to produce an EV is quite a bit higher than what it would require to go and produce a regular gasoline car like that. And that's not good, is it? You're trying to drive something to help save the environment, but it actually takes more resources and energy to actually build it. As a consumer, you only get it at the end of its life cycle, like in the second half of its life cycle, where you're just driving it and it's already made and built and like contained and everything. So you drive emission free, sound free, just glide through. But the batteries, let's talk about the batteries, are made up of rare earth metals, and they are called rare earth metals because they aren't abundantly found on the surface of the earth. A rare earth metal that I guess we all know about, and for its ornamental value too, is gold. Like, it's very expensive to mine it, to refine it, and to actually mold it into something of value to us. While lithium, manganese, cobalt, nickel aren't needed to be molded, they're just put in batteries. Well, they sort of are needed to be molded into battery packs. The process of actually digging it up, refining it, is quite the mega project if you think about it. Like, it's not just like, it's not like a sand quarry where you dig up and then you quickly like physically put it onto a conveyor belt, and like there are different physical and some chemical processes to like separate the sand from like the different sort of mineral compositions you find in soil. Because these rare earth metals are found in very small ores in the earth. I think China found one and they've like captured it. Another one that was recently found was also by India, a lithium ore. There aren't too many in the world, so it's definitely another scarce resource that we are moving onto from our already scarce source, which is petroleum, which is oil. I'm not even gonna say petrol, because oil, the petrol and diesel we use, is actually refined like step by step by step. Crude oil is basically what we dig from the depth of the crust of the earth, and it is extracted through those big oil rigs that I guess you have seen of in like oceans or even in the land. And then that is burned and put through different chemical and like physical processes where at different temperatures different things melt, condense, extract, split. And then you have different things like diesel coming out, petrol coming out, bitumen coming out, naphtha coming out. Bitumen is like the solidifying agent on our pitch. Jet fuel coming out, kerosene. And that's a whole expensive process. And in fact, if you look at it, before the 1800s and even the early 1900s, when the Industrial Revolution started, oil extraction wasn't profitable at all back in the day because there wasn't a demand for it. And the more you, again, come back to mass producing something, economies of scale come into practice. Economies of scale as in using the same equipment for a big amount of output, basically, and processing. And so then it becomes profitable. And it's the same phase where with lithium and these rare earth metals I just mentioned. And so as a result, the more you drive your EV, the more environmentally friendly it is. There is a certain cost point in the future after driving, I think, 50 to 80,000 kilometers that it finally becomes an environmentally clean, like environmentally neutral sort of object, because by driving so much you off-put all the carbon emissions that go into producing it, whereas in a regular gasoline cars, the more you use it, you're still continuing to burn off fuel and produce gas. But by that point, I feel like it'd be a good 5 to 8 years after like driving. And so that comes back to my original question: how environmentally friendly are EVs if the production is a lot more dirtier than just a regular gasoline engine at the moment? At least I'm sure it'll be a lot easier, a lot cheaper, a lot more environmentally friendlier to produce, but we're also again depleting the Earth's resource of lithium and manganese and cobalt, which are rare earth metals, and at the end of the day just not found abundantly. Like something that would be easier to extract is probably aluminium and iron, more abundantly found. I don't know the exact percentages of these ores found, but they're definitely more easier to find and refine. Refine is the main thing when it comes to how much energy you put into an ore. Like when you find an iron ore, it's not just iron, it's iron mixed with different chemicals that then you need to put through a smelting process, a refining process, mix it with different chemicals, burn fuel actually to like extract pure iron. And aluminium is in the same thing. But again, lithium, manganese, cobalt, again back to these basic elements, they require a lot more energy in refining, primarily because we don't do it as much, but also it might get cheaper when we do it in a larger scale, but also just because they're more found in a more complex and sophisticated manner out in the natural open compared to aluminium, let's say, or iron. There's also the other phase that I talked about in a previous video that I don't know if everyone considered, and that is what happens to an EV battery when it's come to the end of its life cycle. Like, we don't really have recycling technology yet for an EV. The battery, if it's left at a landfill, will without a doubt be very hazardous and toxic to the soil around it, the waterways that it'll contaminate, and eventually to us, where there are human habitats near garbage disposal sites, cesspool area. Like if it had like 2,000 battery packs just left there rotting, the entire hill would be corrupt. And unlike other forms of disposable waste, these toxic chemicals, even if found in like milligrams per kilogram, like just 1 or 2, can be highly toxic to the human body. Like there was a case in Flint, Michigan, where there was a bit of water poisoning in the taps. I know in Nepal you can't drink tap water, you have to like buy water, jarred water, purified water, but in Flint, Michigan, America, there was a case where there was lead, I believe, to be found from the pipelines underneath. They were corroding, and so due to some mishap, users of water pipelines in this city suddenly had like milligrams, tiny milliliters of lead found in drinking water, and even that much is highly poisonous to the human body. So just think about what 2,000 battery packs from 2,000 EV vehicles would do in a landfill site somewhere around Nepal. And considering that we don't really have proper means of like containing, recycling it yet. So again, I'm just thinking out loud about like how environmentally friendly are EVs at the end of the day, because that's what they are primarily sold. It consumes electricity too, which is something I've forgotten about, where we use that electricity. And Nepal, the good thing about Nepal is that it is mostly reliant on hydropower for electricity production, and it's not burning nuclear fuel, it's not burning gas So, and here's a benefit. I'm now driving again because this is something that won't require me to as proactively think about, and I can now focus also on my environment. But the good thing about an EV, though, at least for me, is that it is quite economical. In the sense, money-wise, it's been a good amount of savings as compared to driving a gasoline car in Kathmandu. And what I mean by that is, yes, they are still an upfront higher cost. You don't get an EV just yet with a good amount of range, just how far it can go in a single charge. Like EVs that can do 300 and above usually cost 50 and above. And I know Nepal government has done a good thing about subsidizing EV taxes in terms of like, as compared to a gasoline engine, it's just 30-40% at the moment. In 2020, I know these tend to fluctuate 30-40% versus the 250, 80, 300% in gasoline counterparts. And so they're a lot cheaper at the moment comparatively, but they are still not as, affordable yet for the mass. When it comes to money and EV, it's electricity that the car consumes to move, and Nepal gets its electricity predominantly from hydroelectricity, which means for the country, money isn't going abroad in fuel. We spend a lot on fuel. I'm not even kidding. The amount of fuel we import to run our vehicles, our industries, is crazy big in our balance of payments. At the moment, our balance of payments, I see a lot of money going out in terms of financing education or people moving out, the exodus of migration of skilled labor. But the second thing I also see a lot of money going out on is, in terms of imports, just how much we spend on fuel that we have to buy to run our everyday vehicles. And all that money now is just in EVs. I wish there was a study out, maybe in the future, if anyone could just drop me a comment about how much money we're actually saving by switching to electricity these days versus using our petrol vehicles. But on top of that, just your running expenses, electricity per unit is 10, maybe up to 15 rupees a unit depending on where you are, or even hypothetically 20 rupees a unit, versus cost of fuel. Diesel is about 150, 160, and petrol is always about 160, 170. It always goes up and down if you kept watch. And that's what I mean. This car will still do me anywhere between 5 to 12 kilometers per unit of electricity. That's usually what the efficiency I get. Right now I'm going downhill a lot. It's actually giving me 13, 14 kilometers per unit of electricity. On uphill, if I was going uphill, it would give me 5, 6. Depends on the vehicle and the motor and the efficiency. That's a different topic. But just think about it. The cost per unit of running in gasoline versus electricity, one is 20 rupees, one is 150 rupees. That's a big difference if you think about it. And there's also the added benefit of, because there just aren't that many moving motor parts in this vehicle, you have less maintenance. You do have to check your vehicle. It's Nepal, bumpy roads. I would want my vehicle inspected every quarterly or at least 2 times a year. But there are less things to change because more things are intact. There aren't many moving parts, moving bells, moving gears in an EV versus a regular gasoline engine. And as a result, your maintenance costs are definitely lower and they also happen quicker. As long as you drive carefully. You can't thrash your car around. You can't thrash a petrol car around either and expect it to last forever, can you? Same thing with an EV. And so when it comes to finances, I feel like this has been easier. Yes, if you can afford the upfront cost of an EV, as I've been saying, it's a bit expensive still for the everyday person, for the average person. But if that can be overlooked, then your running costs are just definitely lower. And so that's, I think, my primary reason for switching to an EV. One being the ease of driving, which I've mentioned in another video. Please watch that in another vlog. And 2, the running costs, not more per se the environmental friendliness, I think. I feel like I'm a bit more aware and I do my research, the pros and cons, and it's just a fact to me that these cars aren't yet the most environmentally friendly as they're marketed to be. I'm not blaming marketing because it is their job to like make sure things get sold via the most attractive way. But I'm just thinking out loud and saying there are a lot of benefits to driving an EV in context to Nepal, and for me and my family personally, financially, it's just been a lot easier. In a podcast I mentioned I did a whole East Nepal trip from Kathmandu to Danakpur, Dharan, Beretar, Kakarbitta, Illam, Bhadrapur and back. And this was a 1300 km trip and I did it in I think 1700 rupees roundabout. Imagine doing that in a petrol vehicle. That would have cost anywhere between 8,000 to like 15,000, and I did it luxuriously, exuberantly, with AC on, driving as fast or slow as I needed. So yeah, EVs are environmentally friendly is what we're fed, but as a rational human being, I think it's always wise to look at both the pros and the cons to it. Like, you can't just accept a statement for what it is. And with a bit of digging, this is the sort of research, the readings that I've been coming across, and I just wanted to share it with you all. I feel like it's a bit of all of our civic duty to just look deeper into things and just not accept things for what they are plated and given to you as. You know what I mean? Anyway, if you liked what you heard in this video vlog, please give me a subscribe, drop a comment. I'm sure you have tons of comments if you've like stuck around till the end of this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in.